I'm going to give you an update on what the project's been doing and perhaps indicate some things that perhaps come out of that in terms of RLUK activity. Let me just rehearse what this project is about. It's about identifying our key trends and factors, but actually it's a community-based activity. It is not a consultancy. It's not about taking ideas to a consultant and saying, what shall we think? It's about what we think and how we triangulate three things really. What's going on out in the sector in the broadest sense of the term, and that includes obviously North America and Europe, what actually is going on in the UK, and how we can then understand what our community of researchers and students are actually thinking. And this is where Roger's presentation would be very useful, because that's part of that process. I'm just reminding us that it is a community-based network. The first phase was to have these short briefing papers about what as is. There are three additional themes. That doesn't mean to say the other themes that the university, that the RUK is dealing with is not significant. Of course it is, because we talked about shared cataloguing yesterday, and we're going to talk about unique collections. This is all part of the same picture. It's all contributing towards creating this picture. We set up a blog. Melanie very kindly set up the blog for us. We commissioned some ideas papers, and we organised a community event, and we've discussed with Roger and with Rachel on behalf of the JISC the Ithaca survey. So we've been making progress. I'll just show you this because at Aberdeen I spoke about this, and I'm going to come back to this, and people were actually very energised by this. They rushed up to me afterwards and said, I am not an anarcho-pessimist, and I thought, well, that's very good. And nobody said they wanted to be a zero to hero strategist, and more of that later, but people said, I'm a network effect integrator. So we'll come back to that to see if we're still at the basis of the collections work, network effect integrators. So I'll come back to that. Okay, collection challenges. This is taken from one of the initial papers that Leslie Gilder, my colleague, contributed. This is a sort of baseline of the sort of things that are being thought about in ARL. And you can see from there that there is a sense of not only what is a collection being investigated, but also the sense of the digital and the relationship with print. But I want to pick up two words there that I think have turned out to be quite important. One is services. What services are we delivering? And the other is the institutional mission. And I think there are some really big issues about the relationship, and in a sense, Rowley spoke about this yesterday, the sense in which we're involved in meeting an institutional mission, which we are as individual libraries, and to what extent are we part of a collaborative, national, even supranational collective that actually has a cultural, educational and research commitment, value and collaborative model. I think that's a very important issue, because the more we talk about individual missions, the more likely we are to lose the other perspective. So that's particularly important with collections, I think. We commissioned some papers. We said, community, produce some papers, and we've got 7. We were absolutely delighted. So please, with the next strand, come forward with 8. And we had these 7 papers, all of which covered a range of different subjects, looking both across print and electronic, both looking at long-term and immediate issues. And I think that was a very, very useful spread. They're all on the blog, so I won't go through them in detail, but just to actually acknowledge how useful they were and how effective they were at promoting discussion. Right, I'm going to give you 8 headlines from the debates that we took place. We had a debate at SOAS on the 1st of November. The first statement here is that libraries are now very clear about aligning their collections to institutions' strategic mission, and that was emphasised particularly by Francis Boyle, who said, well, Imperial doesn't have any legacy collections, as I think you've often said, Debbie. And that was an interesting leitmotif to discuss. What is your mission as an institution? What can you do within that mission as against the other rather broader mission that I was referring to? We all agree that print is still essential. I'm afraid it is essential for current collections as well. We mustn't forget this. But actually, we are seeking solutions for managing low-use material. And I think the figure of 80% was mentioned by somebody, I won't reveal who, and I don't know how they know, but actually they say we reckon about 80% of our stock, our print stock, is low use. Now, what does that actually mean? We talked yesterday about the complexities of discovery and the fact that even in a commercial environment, 80% penetration by Google for users to find things is acceptable. So what is the 20%? If we accept that as a given, what is the 20%? Is actually surfacing this material, as we spoke about yesterday afternoon, is this going to make a difference? So is this linked actually to not just about throwing the stuff away or relegating it or giving it to somebody else? Is it about making sure that that stock works? So that's another, because print is with us. And of course, it's a space demand. There is an increasing demand from, if you look at Leslie's summaries, I think there's one that says that senior university academic says, well, basically the library's wasting space which we can use more effectively for something else. Now, that's the most extreme version, and we mustn't be frightened by that. I think there are libraries that have had to meet that challenge. But nonetheless, it's one that is one of the service values of us managing our collections. But everybody is actually very clear that we do have a long-term perspective, and that really came out from the meeting, some of the things that Rolly was saying yesterday. So that's first three. We're really responding to an increasingly sophisticated user expectation. It's not just about the range of material, but it's also about the choice of channel. We talked a lot about this at the meeting. And we're looking at a big variety of business models: purchase, license, deposit, digitization. In other words, this is a very complex area, and the relationship between print and digital is placing with us very significant questions. And again, the drift of the conversation was that we should look at these much more collaboratively. We shouldn't be relying on individual institutions to come up with particular solutions which may not be optimized across the sector. So this is all about ownership, what's owned, what's licensed, what is our responsibility. Now, a very interesting discussion was about our responsibility for institutional digital assets. And this, to some extent, came up yesterday, on Wednesday, when some of us went to the RCUK briefing, where the role of repositories as, I suppose, registries of outputs and registries of data management, research data, was actually posited. And I think there are a number of institutions where this is assumed to be the case. It's assumed that the library will take on this particular role. Should we be embracing it? Should we be saying, yes, this is part of our role, and as well as actually owning and licensing and digitizing, we should also be looking at deposits of digital material and managing those deposits on behalf of the institution, and possibly again as part of a collaborative model across the sector. So it's not a surprise then that libraries perceive themselves to be part of a national network. We've often spoken about this, but I think the point really is that the nature of this needs to be interrogated a bit more clearly, because we're talking about multi-formats, responses to different audiences with different requirements, but also a complex situation which is changing. And actually, the national libraries are integral to this. So some of the, I didn't just put this in last night, believe you me, there was a view that the national libraries are integral to this, and that therefore, as part of this national network, we need to engage more closely with the national libraries and be clearer about their position. And actually, libraries are concerned that we need to get on with this, I think is basically the message. There's a lot to do, but actually there's a time issue here about these different pressures, being seen to be managed effectively. So, in terms of the little model here, I think the people who stepped forward said, we're network effect integrators, yes. But I think there are people who are very much in the political repositioners role. This is a political repositioning for the library in terms of both the range of resources that we're trying to manage, the way that we look at services and the way that we get value from collections to the sense of services, but also the way in which politically we come together in a collaborative model. I think that was to me, a very strong output from that. So we may actually, we'll have to see over the next few strands, we may actually ban the anarcho-pessimists and zero-to-hero strategists from our community. So if you are one, don't tell us. Right, the network effect, RLUK. Here are 4 things that we thought RLUK could engage with. There's a whole issue about this national framework. What is it? Rachel's going to speak later about the role of JISC. We heard yesterday about the role of national libraries, certainly the National Library, if I can use that phrase very carefully and very considerately. And there are other partners as well. There are partners of people who provide content that we license content from. There's the whole issue about the publishers, the funders. There's a very big issue here. So how can we actually broker this national framework, and should we be taking a lead? I think that's the question. There is a real interest in having more models. We decided not to say tools. I think tools sounded very mechanical, but models for managing. So UKR and COPAC collection tools are an example. But there could be others, and we talked yesterday about discovery tools. If we genuinely believe that enhancing the use of print collections for value is what we want to do, then discovery tools are part of those tools. They're a very important part of that. I think there is an interest in a shared response to acquiring and describing digital collections and their curation and preservation. I think that's an essential part of that process, and our RLUK has always been involved in these areas. We need to think about what this new picture or this evolving picture is actually telling us about where we should put our interests. And as always, there's promoting innovation and good practice, because actually what people are interested in is sustainable strategies. Sustainability is a word that's used quite a lot these days, but actually it is about not doing something and then finding it doesn't work, or finding that somebody else has done it, or finding that actually it doesn't actually contribute to this collaborative model. How can we actually promote innovation and good practice so that we're actually working collectively and effectively for this overall value? And I just recommend anything that I've said you can look at on the blog, with the exception of the report from SOAS, which Michael Jubb is writing up in a more, perhaps, I say elegant form, but certainly a form that is more has more detail in it, and he'll be doing that in the next couple of weeks. Okay, thank you very much.